I'm Greg Hunter. Thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com with a guy that when he talks, people stop what they're doing and listen. He does not necessarily stop what he's doing because right now he's working out in his gym, but I caught up with Jim Rogers, famed investor. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, Greg, I'm delighted to be here. And yes, I am on my exercise bicycle. I'm multitasking.
You are and listen, I just want to, you've been out recently in some of your interviews, and you have been talking about how President Obama is once again making a fool of himself with these sanctions. And to me, he keep hearing, they're going to bait Russia into some this or that, or it's some really great laid out plan. It just looks clumsy and stupid to me. But what do I know? What do you say?
Well, to me, it's certainly not, in my view, helping the United States more and more. This whole thing in Ukraine started when the U.S. instigated a coup. We have our own diplomats on the phone talking about instigating a coup. We instigated a coup. The Russians naturally reacted. I mean, if Russia had instigated a coup in Canada, I assure you the U.S. would have reacted. So Russia reacted, and now he's gotten us into this situation where we're doing something, they're doing something, and of course this is pushing Russia and China closer together, Russia and other countries closer together, and I don't know what we're getting out of it, except another embarrassment.
Can the sanctions, Vladimir Putin has basically said, the sanctions can basically backfire. He says, the West can cut their nose off to spite their face. Is Putin correct?
Well, in my assessment, of course, this is now pushing Russia towards Asia more and more. I mean, if Russia cannot buy things from the West, they're going to buy them from Asia. If you look at a map, you can see that Russia has gigantic borders. They have many neighbors who will trade with them, no matter what the U.S. says, and they have plenty of people they can sell to. I mean, sanctions are not going to hurt Russia at all, and they may wind up hurting some of our allies, or even us, as bad as they're hurting the Russians.
Is this?
I don't.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yes, just finish your thought about sanctions hurting the U.S. more than Russia.
Well, I don't know that they will, but I can certainly see, as I say, they're pushing Russia towards other countries rather than towards us. And they're pushing them away, maybe pushing them away from Europe. The Europeans don't seem to have any great appetite for all of this, especially since the initial coup was instigated by the U.S. and now we're blaming the Russians when we started the whole thing. John Kerry sits around talking about international law and all the rest of it. I mean, we instigated it. We started it. Russia didn't invade Ukraine. We started this coup. Got rid of a guy who was elected. I'm not saying he's a good guy or anything else. We have a lot of people we support who are not good guys. And then Russia took Crimea back, which they have had for centuries. I don't understand this. This is not helping us or the world.
Could this hasten the fall of the U.S. dollar? Are you worried about an all of a sudden devaluation?
Well, it's certainly causing more people to worry about using the U.S. dollar. I mean, the Americans have said we're going to put all these sanctions on the Russians. Well, if suddenly the Russians cannot clear or trade U.S. dollars, they're going to look for something else. Many countries are already looking for something else. Let's say you put Russia and China and Iran together. Those are three big players in the international financial markets because of oil, if nothing else, in Iran's case. This just pushes people further away from the U.S. dollar. I don't like saying this, Greg, but because I'm an American just like you, but the U.S. dollar is a terribly flawed currency. We're the largest debtor nation in world history, and now we're telling people, you better be careful if you use the U.S. dollar. We may take it away from you. We may block you. So, of course, people are going to look for an alternative.
You have said in the past, and I've used this line over and over again, this is what's going on today has never happened in recorded history. Are you afraid of an outright global systemic crash, especially with what's going on with Russia and the U.S. and the West and over this Ukraine crisis? Are you afraid of a systemic crash in the global economy?
Aren't you? I mean, I don't expect it to happen. I don't think it's going to happen over Ukraine. Well, it could, of course, because politicians do very foolish things. But as this whole world develops and more tensions develop, especially with sanctions here, sanctions there, of course, it's good. Maybe, probably not this year, but maybe next year, the year after. Of course, something's going to go wrong, and we're all going to pay the price. This is the first time in recorded history, Greg, that all the major central banks in the world are printing huge amounts of money. That's never happened before, and we're all going to pay. I mean, there's this huge artificial ocean of liquidity rising. It's going to end someday, one way or the other, and it's not going to be fun for any of us.
And when you say we're all going to pay, how is it that we're going to end up paying? How is it that we end up paying with all this?
Well, there's going to be currency turmoil, interest rate turmoil, and ultimately a stock market turmoil. I mean, some markets, stock markets, are making all-time highs based on this artificial ocean of liquidity. When that ends, some people, you're seeing some emerging markets already suffering because they've been financing themselves on these artificial interest rates and artificial liquidity. It's going to continue. It's going to happen. It's going to affect all of us, including the U.S. stock market. I am no good at market timing, so I have no idea when, but I know it's going to happen. It has to.
And how are you protecting yourself? I mean, this is huge. So this is not something small. I mean, you can see this coming down the railroad track from a mile away with the lights flashing and the horn blowing. How are you protecting yourself? Or if you don't want to say that, how do other people protect themselves?
Well, I own real assets. I own agriculture especially. We've talked about agriculture before. As you may know, agriculture is going through the roof this year. I suspect that's going to continue because the war and tensions are not good for anything, but they are good for commodities, and especially agricultural commodities these days because the fundamentals are so out of balance for agricultural supply. So I do own gold and silver. I'm not buying gold and silver at the moment. In fact, I've hedged some of my gold, but I'm looking for real assets, and I'm looking at depressed markets. I'm actually looking at buying some. I have a few Russian shares. I'm thinking about buying some more. There's nothing like, buying a hated market. Russia's totally hated, probably more hated than any market. Well, Argentina, I guess, is more hated, but it's cheap. It's hated. Suspect this is going to pass, and if it does, I'm not the first person. Well, who was it? Old man Rothschild was the first to say, "Buy when there's blood in the streets." Well, we'll see if I know what I'm doing in a few months and a few years.
Who wins this sanction battle between the U.S. and Russia, in your opinion?
Nobody, because, as I said, get out a map of Russia. There are too many people who will trade with Russia, and even if everybody said we boycott Russia, the borders are so gigantic, there'll be smugglers, and black marketeers everywhere. You cannot cut off Russia from the world market anymore.
Jim Rogers, thanks for coming on, USA Watchdog, and enlightening us with your investment ideas and all your investment experience. Thank you so much for letting us know what you think on the global geopolitical scene.
My delight, Greg. Let's do it again sometime. Thank you.